6 parking tickets in 7 days. That's what the file said when it landed on Judge Frank Caprio's bench that Tuesday morning. I watched him flip through the documents, his eyebrows rising with each page. In my 15 years covering Providence Municipal Court, I'd seen plenty of repeat offenders. But this was different. This was excessive, even by the standards of our city's notoriously aggressive parking enforcement. The defendant's name was Sarah Mitchell, and she was about to walk into Courtroom 2A with a guide dog at her side. I didn't know it yet, but this case would become one of the most talked-about moments in Judge Caprio's storied career. And the secret that would unfold, nobody in that courtroom saw it coming. "Next case," Judge Caprio called out, settling into his chair with that characteristic blend of authority and warmth that had made him a beloved figure in Providence. "Sarah Mitchell, docket number 2024 PV 8847. The courtroom doors opened, and I heard the soft click of claws against the tile floor before I saw her. Sarah Mitchell emerged through the doorway, one hand gripping the harness of a beautiful golden retriever, the other clutching a white cane that swept methodically across the floor. She was in her mid-30s, dressed in a simple blue cardigan and dark slacks, her movements careful but deliberate. The dog, a magnificent creature with an alert, intelligent expression, guided her toward the defendant's table with practiced precision. But something was off. I'd covered dozens of cases involving people with disabilities, and I'd seen my share of service dogs. This one was different. The way it moved, the occasional hesitation in its step, the way Sarah kept adjusting her grip on the harness. There was something unusual happening here that I couldn't quite identify. Judge Caprio noticed it too. I could tell by the way he leaned forward, his sharp brown eyes taking in every detail. This wasn't just another traffic case to him. It never was. Frank Caprio had built his reputation on seeing people, really seeing them, not just their violations. "Ms. Mitchell," he began, his voice gentle but clear, "please approach the bench. And what's your dog's name?" "Atlas, Your Honor," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the obvious nervousness. "He's my guide dog." "Beautiful animal," Judge Caprio said warmly. "How long have you had him?" 3 years, Your Honor. He's been my eyes since I lost my sight." I scribbled notes furiously, but I was also watching. Always watching. That's what made me good at my job. I noticed how Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she spoke. I noticed how Atlas sat perfectly still beside her, but his head swiveled occasionally as if tracking something the rest of us couldn't see. Judge Caprio pulled the thick folder toward him, and I saw his expression shift from friendly curiosity to genuine concern. "Ms. Mitchell, according to these citations, you received 6 parking tickets in the span of 1 week. 6 tickets in 7 days. He paused, letting that sink in. "That's unusual, especially for someone who, I assume, doesn't drive themselves." A nervous laugh escaped Sarah's lips. "No, Your Honor, I definitely don't drive." "Can you explain to me what happened here? Who was driving, and why weren't they more careful about where they were parking?" This was the moment. I could feel it in the air, that electrical charge that comes right before someone reveals something significant. Sarah took a deep breath, and I watched her hand tighten on Atlas's harness. "Your Honor, I was using a rideshare service. Different drivers, different cars, but I needed to get to the same place multiple times last week." "And where was that?" Judge Caprio asked, his tone patient. "Rhode Island Hospital," she said quietly. "The veterinary emergency clinic." The judge's expression softened immediately. "I see. Was Atlas sick?" Sarah shook her head, and I saw tears beginning to form in her eyes. "No, Your Honor. Atlas was fine. It was—" She stopped, composing herself. "It was Duke." "Duke?" "My other dog, Your Honor. My pet. He's 14 years old, and last Monday he collapsed. The vet said he had congestive heart failure. They gave him days, maybe a week, but there was a treatment option, something experimental that might give him more time. It required daily visits to the hospital for IV medications." I felt a lump forming in my own throat. Around the courtroom, I could see the same reaction on other faces. The clerk had stopped typing. The bailiff had set down his coffee cup. Everyone was listening now. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "So you were taking ride shares to the hospital every day to be with Duke during his treatments?" "Yes, Your Honor. And here's the thing." Sarah's voice cracked, and she paused to collect herself. "I can't see where the drivers are parking. I trust them to drop me off legally. I tell them every time, please make sure we're in a legal spot. I can't afford tickets." But apparently, several of them didn't listen, or didn't care. Or maybe they just didn't know the rules. The hospital parking is complicated, and the loading zone is always full. She reached down and touched Atlas's head, and the dog looked up at her with such devotion that I had to look away for a moment. "I'm completely blind, Your Honor. I depend on other people to follow the rules because I can't see them being broken. I can't see the signs, the painted curbs, the fire hydrants. I just trust that when someone drops me off, they're doing it legally." Judge Caprio was quiet for a long moment, studying the papers in front of him. Then he looked up at Sarah, and I recognized that expression. I'd seen it before, that particular blend of compassion and determination that appeared when Frank Caprio was about to do something that made him who he was. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "tell me about Duke. How is he doing now?" Sarah's face transformed, a genuine smile breaking through the tears. "He's better, Your Honor. So much better. The treatment worked. The vet says he might have months, maybe even a year or more. He's home now, resting comfortably. My elderly neighbor has been checking on him during the day while I'm at work." "And what do you do for work?" the judge asked. "I'm a telephone counselor for a crisis hotline," Sarah replied. "I talk to people who are going through the worst moments of their lives. I try to help them find hope." Of course she was. I wrote that down, underlining it twice. This woman, who couldn't see the world around her, who was fighting to save her dying dog while navigating a city she experienced only through sound and touch, spent her days giving hope to strangers. Judge Caprio picked up the stack of tickets and fanned through them slowly. "These citations total $930, he said. "That's a significant amount of money." "Yes, Your Honor," Sarah whispered. "I've been trying to save up, but with Duke's medical bills, I've spent over $3,000 on his treatment already. I know that's probably hard to understand, spending that much on a pet, but Duke has been with me since before I lost my sight. He's family." "It's not hard to understand at all," Judge Caprio said firmly. "Love is love. Family is family. Anyone who's ever loved an animal understands exactly what you mean." He set the tickets down and looked at Sarah directly. I could see him thinking, weighing, considering. This was what made covering his courtroom so compelling. Frank Caprio never just applied the law mechanically. He applied it humanely. "Ms. Mitchell, here's my problem," he said. "Technically, these are legitimate parking violations. The vehicles were parked illegally, even if you weren't aware of it. The city has rules, and those rules exist for good reasons. Fire safety, traffic flow, accessibility for emergency vehicles." Sarah nodded, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I understand, Your Honor. I'll find a way to pay." "I'm not finished," Judge Caprio said, raising a hand. "My problem is this. You're a blind woman who was trying to save her dog's life. You explicitly asked your drivers to park legally. You had no way of knowing they didn't. You were the passenger, not the driver. And yet, because your name is on the rideshare account, you're the one being held responsible." He picked up his pen, and I could see him making notes on the documents. The courtroom was absolutely silent. "Tell me something, Ms. Mitchell," the judge continued. "When you're working on that crisis hotline, talking to people in their darkest moments, what do you tell them? What message do you try to convey?" Sarah seemed surprised by the question, but she answered without hesitation. "I tell them that they're not alone. That even when everything seems impossible, there are people who care. That the world still has kindness in it, even when it doesn't feel that way. Judge Caprio smiled. A real, warm smile that reached his eyes. That's beautiful. And you know what? You're right. The world does still have kindness in it. He picked up his stamp, and I heard the decisive thunk as he brought it down on the first ticket. Dismissed. Thunk. Dismissed. Thunk. Dismissed. 6 times, one after another. 6 tickets, nearly $1,000 in fines, dismissed. The courtroom erupted in applause. I watched Sarah's face as she processed what had just happened, her expression moving from confusion to disbelief to overwhelming gratitude. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Your Honor, I don't know what to say," she managed. Judge Caprio stood up and walked around the bench, something he rarely did. He approached Sarah gently, mindful of not startling her. "You don't need to say anything," he told her. "You spend your days helping others. You've gone to extraordinary lengths to care for a beloved companion. You did nothing wrong here. The system failed you, not the other way around." He paused, and I saw him look down at Atlas, who was still sitting perfectly at Sarah's side. "Can I ask you something about your guide dog?" "Of course, Your Honor." "I've been watching him throughout this proceeding. He's a beautiful, well-trained animal, but I notice he seems... I don't know quite how to describe it. Is everything all right with him?" And here it was. The secret. The thing I'd been sensing, but couldn't identify. Sarah's hand went to Atlas's head, her fingers gently stroking his ears. "You have good eyes, Your Honor. Better than most sighted people." She took a deep breath. "Atlas is going blind." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. I stopped writing mid-sentence, my pen frozen above my notepad. "What?" Judge Caprio's voice was barely a whisper. "He started showing symptoms about 2 months ago," Sarah explained, her voice thick with emotion. "Progressive retinal atrophy. It's a degenerative condition. He has maybe another 6 months before his vision is completely gone. After that, he won't be able to guide me anymore." The irony was so profound, so heartbreaking, that I had to blink back tears. A blind woman guided by a dog who was losing his sight, fighting to save another dog who was dying. The layers of loss, of love, of the cruel randomness of fate, it was almost too much to process. "I didn't mention it earlier because I didn't want it to seem like I was trying to manipulate your sympathy," Sarah continued. "But yes, Atlas is going blind. I'm trying to save money for a new guide dog. The training and certification process can cost tens of thousands of dollars. Duke's illness came at the worst possible time, but I couldn't just let him die. He's been there for me through everything. Both my dogs have." Judge Caprio's face showed every one of his years in that moment. The weight of what he was hearing, the profound unfairness of it, seemed to settle on his shoulders. But then something shifted in his expression, that spark of determination I'd seen so many times before. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, his voice strong and clear, "I'm going to do something I don't normally do." He walked back to his bench and picked up a piece of paper, writing something on it. Then he folded it and returned to where Sarah stood. "I'm giving you my personal contact information," he said. "Not because I want anything from you, but because I want to help. I have connections in this city, friends who might be able to assist with the cost of getting you a new guide dog when the time comes. I can't promise anything, but I'm going to make some calls." "Your Honor, you've already done so much," Sarah began, but he cut her off gently. "You help people every day," he said. "Let someone help you for once. That's not charity. That's community. That's what we're supposed to do for each other." I was writing frantically now, knowing this was the story. This was the moment that would resonate far beyond this courtroom, beyond Providence, beyond Rhode Island. This was the kind of story that reminded people why they still believed in justice, in kindness, in the basic goodness that exists when we choose to see each other as human beings rather than case numbers. Sarah reached out her hand, and Judge Caprio placed the folded paper in it. Then, in a gesture that I knew I'd never forget, he reached down and gently patted Atlas on the head. "You're a good boy," he told the dog. "You've served well. You deserve to rest soon." Atlas's tail wagged just once as if he understood. As Sarah prepared to leave the courtroom, still clutching that piece of paper like a lifeline, Judge Caprio returned to his bench. But before calling the next case, he addressed the full courtroom. "I want everyone here to understand something," he said, his voice carrying authority but also warmth. "The law isn't just about rules and penalties. It's about people. It's about understanding context, circumstances, and the human beings behind every case that comes before us. Ms. Mitchell's situation is extraordinary, but every person who stands here has a story, has struggles, has dignity that deserves respect." He looked directly at me then, knowing I'd be writing about this, knowing this would be published. The law should serve justice, and justice should serve humanity. When we forget that, we forget why we have laws in the first place. The next case was called, and Sarah Mitchell walked out of the courtroom with Atlas at her side, both of them moving forward into an uncertain future, but carrying with them the knowledge that they weren't alone, that someone had seen them, really seen them, and had chosen compassion. I stayed through the rest of the morning session, covering the usual parade of parking violations, traffic tickets, and minor infractions. But my mind kept returning to Sarah and Atlas, to Duke recovering at home, to the devastating reality that the dog who gave Sarah independence would soon need someone to guide him. Later that afternoon, I did something I rarely do. I called Judge Caprio's chambers and asked if I could speak with him about the case. He agreed, and we talked for nearly an hour. He told me he'd already reached out to 3 organizations that trained service dogs, explaining Sarah's situation. He'd also contacted a local charitable foundation about potentially covering some of the costs. "She's going to be okay," he told me. "We're going to make sure of it, and you're going to help by telling this story. People need to know that there's still good in this world, that the system doesn't always crush the vulnerable, that sometimes justice and mercy can coexist." I'm telling this story now because he was right. In a world that often feels harsh and unforgiving, where bureaucracy can seem cold and impersonal, where the letter of the law can overshadow its spirit, there are still moments that remind us of our shared humanity. There are still people like Frank Caprio who understand that being a judge means being wise enough to know when rules should bend to serve what's right. Sarah Mitchell came to court expecting to be punished for violations she didn't commit, couldn't have prevented, and occurred while she was trying to save a life. She left with her fines dismissed, her dignity intact, and the beginning of a network of support that would help her navigate the challenges ahead. Atlas, the guide dog going blind while guiding the blind, has a few more months of service ahead of him. Duke, the old dog fighting heart failure, has been given more time. And Sarah, the woman who helps others find hope in their darkest moments, was reminded that she deserves hope too. In my years covering this courtroom, I've seen Judge Caprio dismiss thousands of tickets, reduce countless fines, and show mercy to people from all walks of life. But this case, this blind woman, this dying dog, this guide dog losing his own sight, this one stayed with me in a way few others have. Because sometimes justice isn't about what's legal or illegal, right or wrong, permissible or forbidden. Sometimes justice is about seeing people fully, understanding their struggles completely, and choosing compassion when you have the power to do so. That's what happened in Courtroom 2A that Tuesday morning. That is the secret that unfolded when a blind woman and her guide dog stood before a judge who chose to see them not as a case number or a series of violations, but as human beings deserving of dignity, understanding, and help. And that's why, after 15 years of covering courts, I still believe in the possibility of justice. Because sometimes when you least expect it, you witness someone choosing kindness over convenience, mercy over mechanics, and humanity over bureaucracy. Judge Frank Caprio dismissed those tickets with 6 decisive stamps. But what he really did was restore faith in the system, in people, and in the simple but profound truth that we're all responsible for taking care of each other. Sarah Mitchell walked into that courtroom with Atlas at her side, carrying the weight of 6 parking tickets, thousands in vet bills, and the looming loss of her guide dog's sight. She walked out with none of those tickets, a new network of support, and the knowledge that she'd been seen, truly seen, by someone who had the power to help and chose to use it. That's the real story behind those 6 parking tickets. That's the secret Atlas was keeping. Not that he was sick, but that he was still serving, still guiding, still loving, even as his own world grew darker. That's the lesson Judge Frank Caprio taught everyone in that courtroom. That blindness comes in many forms, but the most tragic is when we choose not to see each other's humanity. And that's why this story matters, because in a world that often feels cold and mechanical, where people are reduced to numbers and violations, where the vulnerable slip through cracks in the system every day, there are still moments that prove we can be better. There are still people who choose to be better. There are still judges like Frank Caprio who understand that justice without mercy isn't justice at all. And there are still stories like Sarah's reminding us that when we take the time to truly see each other, when we choose compassion over convenience, when we remember that every case file represents a human being with struggles and dreams and loved ones they're fighting to protect, that's when the system works the way it was always meant to. 6 parking tickets, 1 blind woman, 1 dying dog, 1 guide dog losing his sight, and 1 judge who chose to see past the paperwork to the humanity underneath. That's the story. That's the secret. And that's why I'm still proud to cover this courtroom 15 years later. Because sometimes justice is exactly what it should be: kind.